Lorien and Gondor saved by boat? And are not the bridges of Osgiliath broken down, and all the landings held now by the enemy? On which side will you journey? The way to Minas Tirith lies upon this side, upon the west. But the straight road of the quest lies east of the river upon the darker shore. Which shore will you take now? Well, if my advice is heeded, it will be the western shore and the way to Minas Tirith, answered Boromir. But I am not the leader of the company. The others said nothing, and Aragorn looked doubtful and troubled. I see that you do not yet know what to do, said Celeborn. That's not my part to choose for you, but I will help you as I may. There are some among you who can handle boats. Legolas, whose folk know the swift forest river, and Boromir of Gondor, and Aragorn, the traveller. And one hobbit, cried Merry. Not all of us look on boats as wild horses. My people live by the banks of the Brandywine. Well, that is well, said Celeborn. Then I will furnish your company with boats. They must be small and light, or if you go far by water, there are places where you will be forced to carry them. You will come to the rapids of Sarn Gibber, and maybe at last to the great falls of Rhoras, where the river thunders down from Nen Ithio. And there are other perils. Boats may make your journey less toilsome for a while, yet they will not give you counsel, and in the end you must leave them and the river, and turn west or east. Aragorn thanked Celeborn many times. The gift of boats comforted him, much not least because there would now be no need to decide his course for some days. The others too looked more hopeful. Whatever perils lay ahead, it seemed better to float down the broad tide of Anduin to meet them than to plod forward with bent backs. Only Sam was doubtful. He at any rate still thought boats as bad as wild horses, or worse, and not all the dangers that he had survived made him think better of them. All shall be prepared for you and await you at the haven before noon tomorrow, said Celeborn. I will send my people to you in the morning to help you make ready for the journey. Now I wish you all a fair night and untroubled sleep. Good night, my friends, said Galadriel. Sleep in peace. Do not trouble your hearts overmuch with thought of the road tonight. Maybe the paths you each shall tread are already laid before your feet, though you do not see them. Good night. The company now took their leave and returned to their pavilion. Legolas went with them, for this was to be their last night in Lothlorien, and in spite of the words of Galadriel, they wished to take counsel together. For a long time they debated what they should do, and how it would be best to attempt the fulfilling of their purpose with the ring, but they came to no decision. It was plain that most of them desired to go first to Minas Tirith, and to escape at least for a while from the terror of the enemy. They would have been willing to follow a leader over the river and into the shadow of Mordor, but Frodo spoke no word, and Aragorn was still divided in his mind. His own plan, while Gandalf remained with them, had been to go with Boromir and with his sword help to deliver Gondor, for he believed that the message of the dreams was a summons, and that the hour had come at last when the heir of Elendil should come forth and strive with Sauron for the mastery. But in Moria, the burden of Gandalf had been laid on him, and he knew that he could not now forsake the ring, if Frodo refused in the end to go with Boromir. And yet what help could he or any of the company give to Frodo, save to walk blindly with him into the darkness? I shall go to Minas Tirith alone, if need be, for it is my duty, said Boromir, and after that he was silent for a while, sitting with his eyes fixed on Frodo, as if he was trying to read the halfling's thoughts. At length he spoke again, softly, as if he was debating with himself. If you wish only to destroy the ring, then there is little use in war and weapons, and the men of Minas Tirith cannot help. But if you wish to destroy the armed might of the Dark Lord, then it is folly to go without force into his domain, and folly to throw away. He paused suddenly, as if he had become aware that he was speaking his thoughts aloud. It would be folly to throw lives away, I mean. It's a choice between defending a strong place and walking openly in the arms of death. At least that's how I see it. Frodo caught something new and strange in Boromir's glance, and he looked hard at him. Plainly, Boromir's thought was different from his final words. It would be folly to throw away what? The Ring of Power? He had said something like this at the council, but then he had accepted the correction of Elrond. Frodo looked at Aragorn, but he seemed deep in his own thought and made no sign that he had heeded Boromir's words. And so their debate ended. Merry and Pippin were already asleep, and Sam was nodding. The night was growing old. In the morning, as they were beginning to pack their slender goods, elves that could speak their tongue came to them and brought them many gifts of food and clothing for the journey. The food was mostly in the form of very thin cakes, made of meal that was baked a light brown on the outside, and inside was the color of cream. Gimli took up one of the cakes and looked at it with a doubtful eye. Crab, he said under his breath, as he broke off a crisp corner and nibbled at it. His expression quickly changed, and he ate all the rest of the cake with relish. No more, no more, cried the elves, laughing. You have eaten enough already for a day's march. Well, I thought it was only kind of crab, such as the Dale men make for journeys in the wild, said the dwarf. So it is, but we call it lembas, or whey bread, and it is more strengthening than any food made by men, and it is more pleasant than crab, by all accounts. Oh, indeed it is, said Gimli. Why, it's better than the honey cakes of the Beornings, and that is great praise, for the Beornings are the best bakers that I know of. But they're none too willing to deal out their cakes to travelers in these days. You are kindly hosts. All the same, we bid you spare the food, they said. Eat little at a time.
and only at need. For these things are given to serve you when all else fails. The cakes will keep sweet for many, many days. If they are unbroken and left in their leaf wrappings, as we have brought them, one will keep a traveler on his feet for a day of long labor, even if he be one of the tall men of Minas Tirith.
The elves next unwrapped and gave to each of the company the clothes that they had brought. For each they had provided a hood and a cloak, made according to his size, of the light but warm silken stuff that the Galadriel wove. It was hard to say what color they were, gray with the hue of twilight under the trees. They seemed to be, and yet if they were moved, or set in another light, they were green as shadowed leaves, or brown as fallow fields by night, dusk silver as water under the stars. Each cloak was fastened about the neck with a brooch, like a green leaf veined with silver. Are these magic cloaks? Asked Pippin, looking at them with wonder.
I do not know what you mean by that,
answered the leader of the elves.
They are fair garments, and the web is good, for it was made in this land. They are elvish robes, certainly, if that's what you mean. Leaf and branch, water and stone. They have the hue and beauty of all these things under the twilight of Lorien that we love, where we put the thought of all that we love into all that we make. Yet they are garments, not armor, and they will not turn shaft or blade. But they should serve you well. They are light to wear, and warm enough or cool enough at need, and you will find them a great aid in keeping out the sight of unfriendly eyes, whether you walk among the stones or the trees. You are indeed high in the favor of the lady, for she herself and her maidens wove this stuff, and never before have we clad strangers in the garb of our own people.
After their morning meal, the company said farewell to the lawn by the fountain. Their hearts were heavy, for it was a fair place and had become like home to them, though they could not count the days and nights that they had passed there. As they stood for a moment looking at the white water and the sunlight, Haldir came walking towards them over the green grass of the glade. Frodo greeted him with delight.
I have returned from the northern fences, said the elf, and I am sent now to be your guide again. The Dimril Dale is full of vapor and clouds of smoke, and the mountains are troubled. There are noises in the deeps of the earth. If any of you had thought of returning northwards to your homes, you would not have been able to pass that way. But come, your path now goes south.
As they walked through Caras Galadhon, the green ways were empty, but in the trees above them many voices were murmuring and singing. They themselves went silently. At last, Haldir led them down the southward slopes of the hill.